The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles, its walls made of crystal that caught the light of 1,000 distant stars. Representatives from 300 species sat in their designated sections, their forms ranging from the massive rock-like Thundorians to the floating, translucent whispers. Today they had gathered for what most considered a waste of time. The Vorathene elder stood at the center platform, her 6 eyes closed in concentration. She was old even by the standards of her ancient species. Her scales had turned from vibrant blue to the pale silver that marked a Vorathene who had lived for over 15,000 years. Behind her, 2 more elders stood in silent support, their faces grave. "We have called this emergency session," the elder began, her voice carrying through the chamber without technological aid, "to warn you of a species we have recently discovered." Ambassador Krellner of the Jakari Empire leaned back in his floating throne, his metallic features arranged in what passed for a smirk among his kind. The Jakari controlled 1/3 of the known galaxy. They had conquered 100 worlds and absorbed 50 species into their empire. Warnings from cautious old beings did not interest them. "Another primitive species?" Krellner asked, his voice dripping with boredom. "The galaxy is full of them, Elder. We discover 3 or 4 new ones every cycle." "This species is different," the elder continued, undeterred. She raised one clawed hand and a hologram appeared above the platform. It showed a blue and green world, beautiful and small, orbiting a yellow star. "They call themselves humans. They call their world Earth." General Thrace of the Dravine Compact stood, his armored form towering over most of the assembly. The Dravine were warriors, bred for combat over millions of years of evolution. Their military might was second only to the Jakari Empire, and they did not take kindly to lectures from species who had long ago abandoned warfare. "Let me understand this," Thrace said, his voice a low rumble. "You called an emergency session to warn us about a species that has not even left its own star system?" The hologram zoomed in, showing images of human cities, human faces, human children playing in parks. They looked soft, fragile. Their bodies had no natural armor, no claws, no venom. They were small compared to most galactic species. "We have studied them for 50 of your standard years," the elder said. "We have observed their history, their wars, their development, and we have found something that terrifies us." A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. The Vorathene were known to be overcautious, but this seemed excessive even for them. The elder's eyes opened fully, all 6 focusing on the assembly with an intensity that silenced the murmurs. "In the galaxy's long history, we Vorathene have existed for over 100 million years. In that time, we have watched species rise and fall. We have seen empires that made the Jakari look small. We have witnessed the birth and death of civilizations you cannot imagine." She paused, letting her words sink in. "And in all that time, we have encountered 16 species that shared certain characteristics. We called them the Rage species. They were unstoppable, adaptable, and absolutely refused to accept defeat. Each one nearly destroyed the galaxy before they destroyed themselves. Ancient history," Krellner dismissed. "Legends to frighten children." "No," the elder said firmly. "Fact, documented fact stored in our archives. And these humans match 14 of the 16 behavioral markers we identified in those extinct species." She manipulated the hologram, and images began to play. Humans in ancient times fighting with primitive weapons. Humans building ships to cross their oceans when they had no idea what lay beyond the horizon. Humans splitting the atom while they still fought wars with conventional weapons. Humans reaching for their moon before they had even achieved peace on their own world. "Look at their history," the elder urged. "They have fought over 13,000 recorded wars. They have survived ice ages, plagues, natural disasters that would have ended most species. They have developed weapons capable of destroying their entire world, used them twice, and then somehow stopped themselves from using them again. So they are violent primitives," Thrace said. "We have faced violent species before, Elder. They break quickly when confronted with superior force." "You do not understand," the elder said, and for the first time her voice carried a note of desperation. "It is not their violence that concerns us. It is their refusal to stop. It is their ability to adapt. It is their terrible, beautiful stubbornness in the face of impossible odds." She showed more images. Humans climbing mountains that killed them. Humans diving to ocean depths that crushed their bodies. Humans launching themselves into space in vessels that frequently exploded. Humans building, fighting, learning, growing, never stopping, never giving up. They have a saying, the elder continued. When humanity is pushed to the edge, when there is nowhere left to run, they do not surrender. They bare their teeth and they fight. They call it going down swinging, and they would rather die fighting than live in chains. Poetic, Krellner said dryly. But irrelevant. They are decades away from even crude faster-than-light travel. By the time they could pose any threat, they will have been integrated into the galactic community. Civilized. Controlled. The elder closed her eyes again, and when she spoke, her voice was heavy with sorrow. We did not call this session to debate. We called it to warn, and we leave you with 3 explicit warnings, recorded in the official council archives. The chamber's recording systems activated automatically, glowing blue to indicate that what followed would be permanently stored. First warning, the elder said, never back humans into a corner. When they have no way out, they become something else, something dangerous. Second warning, never threaten their young or their homes. They will accept their own deaths with strange calm, but threaten what they love and they will burn the galaxy to ash to protect it. Third warning, never assume their limits are their limits. What they cannot do today, they will do tomorrow. What kills them now, they will survive next time. They learn from every failure, adapt from every defeat, and they never ever stop trying. The elder looked around the chamber, her ancient eyes meeting those of the council's most powerful members. We Vorathene have seen the rise and fall of empires. We have watched species that seemed invincible crumble to dust, and we tell you now, with all the weight of our 100 million years of memory, these humans are either going to be your greatest allies or your worst nightmare. The choice you make will determine which. She stepped back and the 3 elders turned to leave. Wait, called Counselor Mira of the Peaceful Confederation. What should we do then? What do you recommend? The elder paused at the chamber's entrance. Leave them alone. Let them develop naturally. When they reach for the stars on their own, greet them as equals. Show them friendship, not force. Because if you try to conquer them, if you try to control them, you will learn too late why 16 other species like them are now extinct. The elders left the chamber in silence. The moment they were gone, the murmurs began. Within minutes, the laughter started. Within an hour, the council had voted to classify the Vorathene warning as overcautious and dismissed. Ambassador Krellnor returned to his empire and reported that the elders were finally showing signs of senility. General Thrace told his superiors that the Vorathene had grown soft over the millennia, seeing threats where none existed. The warning was filed away, stored in the vast archives of the Galactic Council, where it would gather dust and be forgotten. The elders returned to their sanctuary worlds, deep in uncharted space where they had retreated after the fall of the last rage species 3 million years ago. They had done their duty. They had given warning. Now they could only wait to see if this time the galaxy would listen. But deep in their hearts, in the part of them that had watched civilizations rise and fall for 100 million years, the elders knew the truth. The galaxy never listened. It never learned. Pride and arrogance were universal constants, and they always led to the same result. Somewhere on a small blue world, a human child looked up at the stars and dreamed of touching them. And the galaxy, in its infinite arrogance, had no idea what was coming. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Dawn, watching the blue-green world of Proxima Centauri b grow larger in the view screen. It had taken them 4 years to reach this point, 4 years of cold sleep and dreams of a new home. Behind her ship, 3 more colony vessels followed, each carrying 10,000 sleeping passengers and the hopes of a humanity that had finally reached beyond its own star. "We're receiving something," Lieutenant Park said from the communications station. His face had gone pale. "Captain, it's not from Earth, it's not from any of our ships." The view screen flickered and a face appeared. It was not human. The being had 4 eyes arranged in a square pattern, skin that looked like polished obsidian, and a mouth full of crystalline teeth. When it spoke, the translation software rendered its words into flat, emotionless English. "Attention, primitive species. You are now within the territory claimed by the Dravine Compact. By the authority of General Thrace, Supreme Commander of the Eastern Expansion Fleet, you are hereby ordered to surrender your vessels and submit to processing. You will become a client species of the Compact. Resistance is futile. You have 6 of your Earth hours to comply. The transmission ended. Sarah stared at the blank screen, her mind racing. They had expected to find alien life eventually, but not like this. Hot demands and threats before even a proper introduction. "Get me a channel to Earth," she said. "Priority 1. And wake up the senior staff, all of them." The next 6 hours were chaos. Earth's governments, already fractured and competitive, suddenly found themselves facing a common threat. The United Nations Emergency Council convened. Military advisors argued, politicians debated, and 4 colony ships sat in space above Proxima Centauri b, waiting. The response humanity sent back was simple and direct. Admiral Marcus Webb, speaking for the newly formed Earth Defense Coalition, looked directly into the camera and said one word: "No." General Thrace, watching the human response from his flagship 3 light days away, felt something he rarely experienced: confusion. In 200 years of military service, he had overseen the subjugation of 17 primitive species. All of them had either surrendered immediately or after a brief show of resistance. None had simply refused. "Send the standard enforcement fleet," he ordered. 40 ships should be more than sufficient. "If they will not surrender peacefully, we will teach them the price of defiance." The Dravine fleet arrived at Proxima Centauri 2 weeks later. By then, the humans had awakened all their colonists and evacuated them to the planet's surface. The 4 colony ships remained in orbit, and they had been modified. Sarah Chen, now promoted to Commodore and placed in command of humanity's first space defense force, watched the Dravine fleet approach. "They have 40 warships," her tactical officer reported. "Our sensors are reading weapon systems centuries ahead of our technology. Shields we can't penetrate. Engines that make our drives look like firecrackers." "What do we have?" Sarah asked. 4 colony ships, 12 cargo vessels that we've strapped mining lasers to, and a lot of anger," the officer replied. Sarah smiled grimly. "Then we make them count." The Battle of Proxima Centauri lasted 4 hours. By the end, 3 human colony ships were destroyed. The New Dawn was crippled and drifting. 9 of the improvised human warships were nothing but debris. The Dravine lost 2 ships to lucky hits and sustained minor damage to 3 others. General Thrace examined the battle reports with satisfaction. "Broadcast the surrender terms again. They have learned their lesson." But when the communication went out, there was no response. The surviving human vessels went dark. All communications ceased. The human colony on the surface shut down all transmissions. "They are hiding," Thrace concluded. "Cowering. Good. Let them fear for a few days, then we will land troops and complete the subjugation." What Thrace did not know, what none of the Dravine understood, was that humanity had not gone dark out of fear. They had gone dark because they were done talking. On Earth, the governments had finally united in a way they never had before. The destruction of 3 colony ships, the deaths of 30,000 people had triggered something primal in the human species. Every nation opened its military archives. Every corporation shared its research. Every scientist, engineer, and soldier volunteered. The species that had split the atom to end a war now turned all of its creative energy toward a single purpose: survival. Deep in Antarctic research bases, scientists worked on weapons banned since the 20th century, now modified with 22nd century technology. In orbital factories around Earth's moon, workers constructed ships using new designs, built for speed and hitting power rather than comfort or safety. In training facilities across the globe, volunteers lined up by the millions. On Mars, in the asteroid belt, on the moon, in every human settlement beyond Earth, the same transformation occurred. Miners became soldiers, scientists became weapons designers, colonists became resistance fighters. Admiral Webb addressed the species through every screen, every device, every communication platform humanity possessed. His message was broadcast in every language on every frequency. "They came to our new home and they killed our people. They think we will surrender because their technology is better than ours. They think we will bow because they are stronger. They have made a mistake. They have backed us into a corner. And cornered animals do not surrender. They fight." He paused, and his next words would echo through history. "We are not starting a war. They already started it. We are finishing it. Earth Defense Coalition, activate the Mars Doctrine." The Mars Doctrine was something humanity had prepared but hoped never to use. It was a plan born from the darkest periods of human history, from the wars that nearly destroyed their species. From the times when survival meant doing the unthinkable, every human became a weapon, every colony became a fortress, and humanity began to fight not to win battles, but to make victory too expensive to claim. The first Dravine supply convoy disappeared 3 weeks after the Battle of Proxima Centauri. It was supposed to be a routine resupply run from the nearest Dravine outpost to General Thrace's occupation fleet. The convoy never arrived. No distress signals were sent. No wreckage was found. The second convoy went missing a week later. Then a third. Thrace sent warships to investigate. They found debris, but it was strange. Human debris mixed with Dravine wreckage. Small ships, barely more than cargo pods with engines, had rammed the convoys at relativistic speeds. Kamikaze attacks. Suicide runs barbaric, Thrace muttered. They are throwing away lives for minor victories. But the attacks continued. And they were not minor victories. Each convoy that disappeared was supplies that never reached the occupation fleet. Each warship diverted to escort duty was a warship that could not subjugate other human colonies. Then the infiltrators began their work. A Dravine mining operation on a mineral-rich asteroid suddenly lost power. By the time rescue ships arrived, all 200 Dravine workers were dead. Security footage showed humans, but not the soft, fragile creatures from the initial reports. These humans had been modified, enhanced. They moved too fast, lifted objects too heavy for their frames, and fought with a precision that spoke of extensive training. A Dravine military outpost reported strange signals in their computer systems, then went silent. When reinforcements arrived, they found the base's reactors set to overload and every Dravine soldier locked in their barracks by their own security systems. How are they doing this? Thrace demanded. Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs. Our ships are faster. Our weapons are stronger. How are primitives attacking our installations? His intelligence officer pulled up a report. Sir, they are not fighting like a military. They are fighting like an infestation. Small groups, striking from unexpected angles using unconventional weapons. And sir, they are learning. Each attack is more sophisticated than the last. Thrace made a decision. Broadcast to all human colonies. Tell them that for every attack on our forces, we will bombard one of their settlements from orbit. They need to learn that resistance has consequences. 2 weeks later, 2 small human colonies on distant moons were destroyed from orbit. 10,000 human civilians died. The Dravine expected this show of force to break human resistance. Instead, it unified them. Every human in the galaxy saw the footage of those bombardments. They saw their people, unarmed and helpless, killed from space, and something broke in the collective human psyche. Or perhaps it was something that finally awakened. Admiral Webb's next broadcast was short. They have killed our people. They have destroyed our homes. They wanted to teach us a lesson. They have. We have learned that mercy is wasted on conquerors. We have learned that we are alone in this galaxy, and we have learned that if we are going to die, we are taking them with us. Earth's moon-based factories shifted production. No more defensive ships. Now humanity built weapons platforms, missile satellites, and something new. Relativistic kill vehicles. Missiles that could accelerate to a significant fraction of light speed. Missiles that could not be stopped once launched, because by the time sensors detected them, they had already arrived. Humanity had crossed a line. They were no longer fighting to protect their colonies. They were fighting to survive. And a species fighting for survival did not follow the rules of civilized warfare. Across the galaxy, in the 2 years had passed since the Battle of Proxima Centauri, and the galaxy had learned a new emotion: unease. Trade routes that once passed safely through former human space now required armed escorts. Merchant ships traveled in convoys, and every species with interest in that region of the galaxy had to recalculate their risk assessments. On the Jakari homeworld, Ambassador Krelnor sat in his office reviewing profit reports. His secret weapon sales to the Dravine had been extremely lucrative. The compact was paying premium prices for advanced shields, sensors, and ammunition, and the best part was that the conflict seemed endless. Humans refused to surrender, and the Dravine refused to withdraw. It was a perfect situation for an arms dealer. His assistant, a smaller Zakari with copper-colored plating, entered carrying a data tablet. Sir, another report from the Dravine front. 3 more supply ships lost this week. Krelnor waved a metallic hand dismissively. The Dravine have plenty of ships. This war could continue for another decade at this rate. Excellent for business. What Krelnor did not see, what his profit-focused mind could not comprehend, was the pattern in those losses. The attacks were not random. They were surgical. Humanity had spent 2 years studying Dravine tactics, Dravine technology, and Dravine psychology. And they had learned. Lieutenant Commander James Okonkwo floated in the cockpit of his modified fighter, watching the Dravine convoy approach through his passive sensors. His ship was barely a ship at all anymore, just a cockpit strapped to engines and weapons. No life support to speak of, no comfort systems, no extra weight. He and his suit had enough oxygen for 6 hours. That was all he needed. Ghost Squadron, confirm positions, he whispered into his comm. 5 voices responded, each from a different hiding spot in the asteroid field. 6 ships total, barely registering on sensors, waiting for a convoy of 20 Dravine vessels. The old James would have thought this was suicide. The new James, the one forged in 2 years of desperate warfare, knew it was just Tuesday. Remember the drill, he said. Hit the escorts first. Disable, not destroy. We need the supplies intact. The Dravine convoy entered the asteroid field, confident in their superior sensors and shields. They had no idea that the asteroids themselves had been rigged. Humanity had learned to be patient, to prepare ambushes months in advance. James gave the signal. 6 human fighters screamed out of hiding at velocities that should have killed their pilots. But humanity had learned to push their bodies beyond normal limits using drugs, genetic modifications, and technology scavenged from every battle. The fight lasted 4 minutes. By the end, 3 Dravine escorts were crippled, the rest were fleeing, and the supply ships were boarded by humans in combat suits. James watched through his fighter's camera as his team secured the cargo. Food, medicine, weapons, and most valuable of all, manufacturing equipment. Good work, Ghost Squadron, Admiral Webb's voice crackled through the comm. Bring it home. But there was no home, not really. Earth was protected by defensive platforms and a paranoid military. The colonies were fortresses. Humanity had stopped building homes and started building weapons. An entire generation of children was growing up in underground bunkers, learning to fight before they learned to read. This was what the elders had warned about. A species pushed past the point where civilization mattered into pure survival mode. General Thrace stood before the Dravine High Command, his career and reputation crumbling around him. The conquest that should have taken months had dragged on for 2 years. His forces, once proud and confident, now jumped at shadows. The humans are using guerrilla tactics, he explained to the stone-faced commanders. They refuse to engage in open battle. They strike from hiding, they run, they hide, and they strike again. Then find where they hide, High Commander Draxus growled. You have thousands of ships. They have dozens. How is this even a competition? Because they are not fighting to win battles, Thrace said, and for the first time his voice carried a note of respect for his enemy. They are fighting to make every victory cost us more than we can afford. Every supply convoy we send requires 3 escorts. Every outpost needs triple guards. Every expansion into their territory costs us ships, soldiers, and resources. We are bleeding ourselves dry trying to conquer a species that will not accept defeat. Draxus leaned forward. Then we break them. We have been too gentle. Authorize planetary bombardment. Turn their worlds into glass. They will surrender when they have nothing left to protect. Thrace hesitated. High Commander, the Vorathene elders warned against threatening human homes. They said, the Vorathene are cowards who fled from their own shadows 3 million years ago, Draxus interrupted. Their warnings are meaningless. Authorize the bombardments. 3 weeks later, Dravine warships entered orbit around 2 human colonies. These were not military targets. They were farming worlds, places where humans grew food to feed their population. The Dravine broadcast their intentions. Surrender all military operations or watch these worlds burn. Humanity's response came not in words but in action. Every human military asset in the region converged on those 2 worlds. It was a trap, and humanity walked into it willingly. The Battle of Green Haven and New Manitoba lasted 16 hours. Humanity lost 60 ships, the Dravine lost 15. By every military calculation, the Dravine won. They destroyed the human fleet, and then they bombed the colonies as promised. 50,000 humans died. But something changed in the aftermath, something that the Dravine, in their focus on military victory, failed to notice. Across human space, in every colony, on every ship, On Earth itself, something broke. Or perhaps something that had been breaking finally shattered completely. The last restraints of civilized warfare fell away. Dr. Sarah Yuki had been a pacifist before the war. She had protested military spending, advocated for peaceful exploration, and believed that all intelligent life could coexist. She had watched her home colony burn from space. Now she stood in a secret laboratory deep in an asteroid, working on weapons that would have given her nightmares 2 years ago. "The biological agent is ready," she reported to the military liaison, "specifically targeted to Dravine biochemistry. Fatal within hours, contagious, no cure." The liaison, a hardened soldier who had seen too much death, actually hesitated. "Doctor, if we deploy this, we are not just fighting. We are committing genocide." Sarah looked at him with eyes that had cried all their tears months ago. "They bombed our farms. They killed our children. They wanted to break us, they have. Now they get to see what humans become when you break them." The Jakari Empire received a secret communication from General Thrace. The Dravine were offering a partnership, help crush the humans permanently, and the Jakari could claim half the territory. It was an attractive offer. The Jakari agreed. Ambassador Krelnor congratulated himself on his strategic genius. "We sell weapons to both sides and then claim the ruins when they are done destroying each other." But Krelnor made a crucial mistake. He assumed humanity did not have intelligence networks. He assumed they did not know about the Jakari's double-dealing. He assumed wrong. Humanity had learned many things in 2 years of desperate warfare. They had learned to fight. They had learned to adapt. And they had learned to spy. Human infiltrators, some of them genetically modified to pass as other species, had penetrated both the Dravine Compact and the Jakari Empire. When Admiral Webb received confirmation of the Jakari betrayal, he called an emergency meeting of the human military leadership. "They think we are their science experiment," he said to the gathered commanders. "They think they can fund our enemies, profit from our deaths, and then pick over our remains. They need to learn what happens to vultures who circle too close." "Sir, we are already fighting a war we cannot win against the Dravine," one commander pointed out. "Adding the Jakari to our enemies list is suicide." Webb smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Then we better make sure we take them with us. Activate the Special Projects Division. Tell them it is time to deploy the things we hoped we would never have to use." The Special Projects Division had been working in secret since the war began. Their mandate was simple: develop weapons so terrible that their mere existence would deter attack. Weapons that violated every treaty humanity had signed when they were still innocent. Now humanity was not innocent. They were survivors, and survivors did not have the luxury of moral high ground. The first attack came not against military targets, but against trade routes. Human ships, stripped down to nothing but engines and cargo holds, filled themselves with relativistic kill missiles and launched themselves at trade convoys. Not Dravine or Jakari ships, but neutral vessels. Ships from species that had stood by and watched humanity burn. The message was clear. If you do business with our enemies, you are our enemies. Galactic trade in the region collapsed within a month. Species that had no stake in the war suddenly found themselves losing ships, losing money, losing people. They demanded the Galactic Council intervene, but the Council was paralyzed. Half the members wanted to end the war through mediation. The fortress world of New Horizon hung in space like a jewel, humanity's largest remaining colony outside of Earth. 3 million people lived on its surface, protected by orbital platforms, shield generators, and the desperate hope that the enemy might overlook them. They did not. General Thrace and Ambassador Krelnor stood together in the command center of the combined Dravine-Jakari fleet. Around them, holographic displays showed 400 warships, the largest military force assembled in this region of space in 1,000 years. 60% of their combined military might, all focused on one world. "This should have been finished years ago," Krelnor said, his metallic face reflecting the cold light of the displays. "One decisive blow. Break their largest colony and the rest will crumble." Thrace nodded, though part of him felt uneasy. 3 years of fighting humans had taught him to never assume victory. But the numbers did not lie. 400 ships against a colony, defended by perhaps 50 human vessels and orbital platforms. "It should be over in days. Begin the assault," he ordered. The fleet moved forward, and New Horizons defenders began to fight. Admiral Wei Jiang commanded the defense from the orbital station Defiance. She was 60 years old, had lost her daughter in the first year of the war, and had forgotten what peace felt like. She looked at the approaching armada and felt no fear. Fear had died somewhere in the second year. Now there was only purpose. All batteries free fire as soon as they are in range, she commanded. Launch all fighters. Activate the minefield. And broadcast the message. Across every frequency and every language the translator could manage, New Horizons sent its declaration to the attacking fleet, to the galaxy, to history. We are New Horizon. We are 3 million souls who wanted nothing but to build homes among the stars. You came to conquer us. You came to enslave us. You came to destroy us. You have failed. Every day you have fought us, we have learned. Every defeat has taught us. Every loss has made us stronger. You think you face a broken species. You are wrong. You face humanity, and humanity does not surrender. We will make you pay for every meter of ground. We will make you bleed for every minute you stay. And if we must die, we will die making sure you remember us forever. The battle began. The first wave of Dravine and Jakari ships hit the minefield and learned that human mines were not simple explosives. They were AI-controlled drones that had been waiting, learning enemy ship signatures for 3 years. They struck with precision, targeting engine cores and life support systems. 30 ships died in the first 15 minutes. Press forward, Thrace commanded. They cannot have enough mines to stop us all. He was right. The minefield claimed 50 ships total before it was expended. The fleet continued forward, now down to 350 vessels. Then they met the orbital platforms. Human engineering had evolved during the war. The platforms were not simple gun batteries. They were kinetic accelerators that fired chunks of iron at fractions of light speed. They were laser arrays powered by miniature fusion reactors. They were missile pods that released thousands of smart munitions. The platforms died quickly under the overwhelming firepower of the fleet. But they took another 40 ships with them. 310 ships remained. Wei Jiang watched her defenses crumble and smiled grimly. Phase 2. Launch the harpoons. The harpoons were humanity's nightmare weapon, born from desperation and applied physics. They were small ships, barely larger than fighters, with one purpose: accelerate to relativistic speeds and ram. Their targets were not the attacking fleet. Their targets were the 2 moons orbiting New Horizon, moons that the fleet was using as cover and staging areas. The impact of a harpoon turned those moons into weapons. Chunks of moon, accelerated to incredible speeds, became planet killers. The fleet, positioned near the moons for tactical advantage, found itself in the path of a debris field moving at 10% light speed. Ships died by the dozens, not from human weapons, but from the moon itself. Retreat from the moons, Krelnor screamed. They turned the terrain into weapons. 230 ships remained. General Thrace felt cold calculation overcome his shock. We still outnumber them. Land troops on the surface. If we cannot win in space, we will win on the ground. Troop carriers descended through New Horizons' atmosphere, protected by fighter escorts and point defense systems. They expected ground-based defenses, fortifications, perhaps some desperate last stand by human soldiers. What they found was a population that had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. Every civilian was a soldier. Every building was a fortress. Every street was a killing ground. The Dravine troops that landed in Sector 7 found themselves fighting humans who refused to follow any military doctrine. Children threw grenades from windows. Elderly humans operated sniper rifles from hidden positions. Families fought together, covering each other with military precision born from years of mandatory training. They are not soldiers, one Dravine commander reported. They are an entire population that has weaponized itself. But the worst was yet to come. In the underground laboratories beneath New Horizons' capital city, Dr. Sarah Yuki activated the bioweapon she had spent 3 years perfecting. It was released in aerosol form over the battlefield, invisible and odorless. Dravine soldiers breathed it in. Within hours, they began showing symptoms. Within a day, they were dead. The plague was species-specific, targeting Dravine biochemistry with surgical precision. It spread through the Dravine troops like wildfire. Within 3 days, 70% of the ground forces were dead or dying. Pull back, Thrace ordered. Get our troops off that world. But as the Dravine retreated, the Jakari made their move. They had held back, letting the Dravine take the casualties, waiting for the moment when human defenses were exhausted. Now they struck with their full force, 100 fresh ships launching a coordinated assault. Wei Zhang watched them come and realized the truth. They were going to lose. New Horizon would fall. But the Jacari had made a mistake. They had shown humanity what they cared about most, their core worlds, the wealthy populated centers of their empire far from the front lines. Send the message, Wei commanded. Activate the Sleeper Fleet. The Sleeper Fleet had been humanity's most desperate gamble. 50 small ships, launched in the first year of the war, programmed to travel at slower speeds, taking circuitous routes, hiding in asteroid fields and gas clouds. Each ship carried a crew in cryogenic suspension. Each ship was piloted by AI. Each ship carried 6 relativistic missiles. These ships had been traveling for 3 years, heading not to the front lines but deep into Jacari space, to their core worlds, to their homes. The Jacari High Council received the first reports and refused to believe them. Human ships could not possibly have penetrated so deep into their territory undetected, but the explosions were real. 3 core worlds, each hit by relativistic missiles traveling at 70% light speed. Missiles that could not be stopped because by the time they were detected, they had already struck. Billions of Jacari died in the first hour. Not from the initial impacts, which destroyed entire continents, but from the secondary effects. Atmosphere ignition, tidal waves, nuclear winter. Overlord Kess watched his civilization crumble through the reports flooding in. He had thought humanity was fighting to survive. He had not realized they were fighting to take everyone with them. How did they do this? He whispered. How did we not see these ships coming? His military advisor provided the answer. They launched 3 years ago, Overlord. Before we even joined this war, they predicted we would betray them, and they prepared their revenge before we even considered it. On New Horizon, the battle continued. The Jacari fleet, now receiving reports of the devastation in their home territory, faltered. Some ships began to pull back. Others continued the attack out of sheer rage. Wei Zhang used their confusion to spring her final trap. The orbital station Defiance, damaged and listing, was not abandoned as the Jacari assumed. It was a bomb. A fusion reactor set to catastrophic overload. Positioned perfectly in the middle of the Jacari formation, the explosion consumed 30 Jacari ships and crippled 20 more. General Thrace, watching the battle from his flagship, realized something that filled him with a terror he had never experienced in 2 centuries of military service. Humanity was winning not through superior technology or tactics, but through sheer willingness to sacrifice everything. They fought as if death was irrelevant, as if victory meant nothing compared to making the enemy hurt. Fall back, he ordered. All ships retreat to the outer system. But retreat was not so simple. Human fighters, piloted by volunteers who had no intention of surviving, rammed Jacari ships as they tried to flee. Dravine vessels found their navigation systems compromised by human cyber weapons, sending them spinning into each other or into New Horizon's gravity well. The battle lasted 6 months. Not 6 days as predicted. 6 months of grinding, desperate warfare where every meter was paid for in blood. By the end, New Horizon was a ruin. 2 million of its 3 million inhabitants were dead. Its surface was scarred by bombardment. Its orbital infrastructure was destroyed. But the attacking fleet had been broken. Of the 400 ships that began the assault, fewer than 150 limped away. The Dravine Compact had lost 40% of its navy. The Jacari Empire was the Galactic Council chamber had been rebuilt on a neutral world, far from the territories of any major power. The old chamber on the Jacari homeworld was now a crater visible from space. The new chamber was smaller, humbler, and filled with representatives who had learned the price of arrogance. 5 years had passed since the siege of New Horizon. 5 years since humanity had proven they would rather destroy themselves than submit. The war had officially ended 3 years ago, but the peace summit had taken this long to organize. Too many species wanted to ensure they were safe before putting all their leaders in one room with humans. General Thrace stood at the entrance to the chamber, no longer a general. The Dravine Compact had collapsed in the aftermath of the war, fragmenting into 6 smaller nations. Thrace was now simply a citizen, sent to bear witness to the peace that his pride had made necessary. His armor, once polished to perfection, was scarred and dented. He had refused to replace it. Let it serve as a reminder. Ambassador Krelnor waited nearby, also stripped of his titles. The Jakari Empire had survived, but barely. 3 core worlds devastated, their economy in ruins, their population traumatized. Krelnor had lost everything: his position, his wealth, his family who lived on one of the destroyed worlds. He was here because someone had to accept responsibility for the Empire's mistakes. "They are coming," a council aide announced. The chamber fell silent. Every species present had losses to mourn. The Dravine had lost 40% of their military. The Jakari had lost billions of civilians. Dozens of neutral species had lost trade ships, stations, and personnel to a war that had consumed everything near it. And humanity? Humanity had lost 60% of their total population. Of the 40 billion humans that existed before first contact, only 16 billion remained. Colony worlds were graveyards. Earth itself had been pushed to the brink of collapse from the resource strain of total war. The human delegation entered, and Thrace felt something he never expected: pity. They looked human, walked upright on 2 legs, had 2 arms and 1 head, but something in their eyes had changed. They moved like soldiers, every step calculated. They watched everything, trusting nothing. 3 years of peace had not erased the vigilance of 5 years of total war. Ambassador Chen Liu led the delegation. She had been a diplomat before the war, one of the voices arguing for peaceful expansion. Now she wore the uniform of the Earth Defense Coalition, medals for battles fought and sacrifices made covering her chest. She was 35 years old and looked 50. She took her position at the central platform facing the assembled council. No one spoke. What was there to say? The war had spoken loudly enough. Then the rear doors opened again, and a sound like wind through dead trees filled the chamber. The Vorathene elders had emerged from their sanctuary worlds for the first time in 1,000 years. The ancient elder who had given the original warning moved slowly to the center of the chamber. Her silver scales caught the light, and her 6 eyes surveyed the assembly with an expression that might have been sadness. "We told you," she said simply. Her voice carried without amplification, ancient and heavy with sorrow. 50 years ago, we stood in the old chamber and warned you about humanity. We gave 3 explicit warnings. You dismissed them. You filed them away. You forgot. She turned her gaze to Thrace. You backed them into a corner, then to Krelnor. You threatened their homes, then to the broader assembly. You assumed their limits were their limits. The elder's eyes finally settled on Ambassador Chen. And humanity did exactly what the rage species before them did. They became something else. Something terrible, something magnificent, something that would rather die than kneel. Chen met the elder's gaze without flinching. You are correct, elder, we became monsters. We did things in this war that we will never forgive ourselves for. We killed billions. We deployed weapons that should never exist. We crossed lines that should never be crossed. She paused. But we survived. And we are still here. The question, the elder said, is what happens now? 16 species before yours reached this point. All 16 destroyed themselves and took most of the galaxy with them. You are the 17th. Will you follow them into extinction? Or will you become something new? Chen looked around the chamber, at the representatives of species that had tried to conquer her people, profit from their deaths, or simply watched while humanity burned. Then she looked at her own delegation, at soldiers and scientists and survivors who had seen too much death. We did not want this war, Chen said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. We wanted to explore. We wanted to build. We wanted to be your friends. You made us your enemies instead. You taught us that the galaxy is not safe, that alien civilizations cannot be trusted, that the only security is strength and the willingness to use it. She took a deep breath. But you also taught us something else. You taught us that war is expensive, that victory can be worse than defeat, that there has to be another way. Chen activated a holographic display. It showed human space, scarred and wounded but still inhabited. It showed Earth, its population reduced but recovering. It showed colony worlds being rebuilt, children being born, humans daring to hope again. Humanity has decided, Chen said. We choose peace. Not because we are weak, not because we are afraid, not because we have forgiven, but because we are tired. We are tired of fighting. We are tired of dying. We are tired of waking up every day wondering if this is the day our species goes extinct. She looked directly at the elder. You asked if we will destroy ourselves like the others. Our answer is no. We will not destroy ourselves. We will not destroy the galaxy. but we will also never be conquered, never be enslaved, never kneel to anyone. Counselor Mira of the Peaceful Confederation spoke for the first time. What are humanity's terms for peace? Chen pulled up a document. The Treaty of Terra, humanity had called it. The terms were simple and non-negotiable, full sovereignty for all human worlds and territories. No exceptions. Complete control over their own space, their own laws, their own destiny. Full membership in the Galactic Council, with the same rights and representation as founding species. No probationary period. No restrictions. Recognition of humanity's right to maintain whatever military force they deemed necessary for self-defense. And one final term that made many species uncomfortable. Any attack on a human world by any species would be considered an act of war against all of humanity, to be met with total retaliation. These are not the terms of a defeated species, Overlord Kess of the Jakari said, his voice bitter. No, Chen agreed. These are the terms of a species that refused to be defeated. You had 5 years to crush us. You tried. You failed. These are the consequences of that failure. And if we refuse? Asked a representative from the Dravine fragments. Chen's smile was not pleasant. Then we continue the war. But know this. We have learned much in 5 years. We have developed weapons we have not yet deployed. We have strategies we have not yet used. We have colonies in places you have not yet found. If this war continues, we will not fight defensively. We will hunt. We will strike at your core worlds, your trade routes, your civilian populations. We will become the nightmare you created. The choice is yours, peace on our terms or a war that ends with everyone dead. The chamber erupted in debate. Species argued, threatened, pleaded. But through it all, the elder watched in silence, her ancient eyes seeing what others could not. Finally, the elder spoke, and her voice cut through the chaos. The choice is simple. Humanity offers you peace. They offer trade, cooperation, and the promise that they will be peaceful neighbors if you are peaceful with them. The alternative is that the galaxy learns what a rage species truly becomes when pushed past all limits. I have lived 100 million years. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. And I tell you now, take the peace. Take it and be grateful that humanity still has enough mercy left to offer it. The vote took 3 days. But in the end, the Treaty of Terra was accepted. Not unanimously, not happily, but accepted. Humanity was granted full sovereignty, full council membership, and full rights as a galactic civilization. The war was over. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. Species that had fought against humanity began reaching out for trade agreements. The technology humanity had developed during the war, born from desperation and applied physics, was decades ahead of existing technology in some fields. Human cybersecurity experts were in high demand after their success in cyber warfare. Human engineers were hired to help rebuild the devastated regions. More importantly, a cultural shift occurred. The word human entered the galactic vocabulary, not as a designation for a species, but as an adjective. When someone refused to give up despite impossible odds, they were called human about it. When a species stood firm against threats, they showed human resolve. When something was considered unbreakable or unstoppable, it was human grade. Humanity had become a legend. A warning, a promise, a nightmare wrapped in hope. Earth began to recover. The population grew slowly, carefully. Humans were no longer eager.